Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about the federal death penalty, Biden and Trump. Now, you may have read there were 40 people on death row as of a week ago, and as part of his executive powers, part and parcel of the pardon power, he's given extended clemency to 37 of the 40. So those people will not face the death penalty. Donald Trump can't reverse it. Who's left? You have the Tree of Life shooter who killed 11 people, the white nationalist Dylan Roof, who murdered 9 people at historically black church in Charleston, and one of the 2 brothers in the Boston Marathon. So he's attempted to draw a line from the worst of the worst to the worst of the worst of the worst, if you will. And that's usually what's involved when you have a death penalty trying to single out. So there was some that were too far to go, 37 were spared. Now, this is consistent with the federal death penalty as it's existed since the start in the 80s. With the exception only of Trump's first term. So when Trump took office for the first time, there had been only 3 federal executions. Timothy McVeigh is one of them, who comes to mind, the Oklahoma City bomber. But it had been exceedingly rare. Trump pushed things up, and he and Bill Barr also put a greater emphasis on the federal death penalty. And the last year in Trump's office, there were more executions in the federal government, not only than there ever been, but in all 50 states combined. And now he's announcing they're going back to this robust use of the death penalty. Here is how Trump justifies this action. I'll just read. As soon as I'm inaugurated, I'll direct the Justice Department to vigorously pursue the death penalty to protect American families and children from violent rapists, murderers, and monsters. We will be a nation of law and order again. Okay, so what do we have here? We have an unsupported assertion, blunt, unsophisticated, and basically emotional, that says we need this to protect the American public from rapists, murderers, and monsters. Now, we can just start with the fact, let me take 2 steps back. Whatever one's views of the death penalty, and it's well known that, Merrick Garland doesn't favor it personally, but has let it go forward. That was also the position of Janet Reno. It is on the books, but whatever one's position, it is important, I think everyone would agree, that it be administered in a consistent, fair way. It's kind of the ultimate nightmare of the justice system, that whether somebody gets death or not is based on capricious, irrelevant circumstances, like, for example, a new president who just wants to play the issue emotionally. Now, one step back, murderers, rapists, all these folks, they almost never are eligible for the federal death penalty. These are always about state crimes, and states handle them within their system. And state death penalties are decreasing really dramatically. We're talking over the last 20 or 30 years, but they're still substantial. Texas, in particular, still imposes it. But something is nevertheless amiss, that what's going on here now, a lot of people will be subject to the death penalty who wouldn't have been before. That would be fine in a sense. I am personally against the death penalty, but it was the law of the land. As a prosecutor, I sought it. And I considered that my responsibility for being administering federal law, but that it go spike upwards without good reason. If Trump were bringing to bear some showing that the rapists and murderers and other serious crimes he talks about would be reduced with the death penalty, there would be an argument that could justify it, at least in a world in which it were possible. Or it had been an absolute mandate of the election. People had been up in arms, that's worrisome or problematic or whatever, but you can understand it might be rational in some sense if he were responding to a popular call. I detect no popular call for the death penalty, or no mandate as he would attempt to put it. And worse, this proliferation is simply, visceral. It's just a kind of Trumpian, as always. This is increasingly clear to me. At bottom, with Trump, there's always a lie. And the lie here, the implicit lie, is that this is going to, or this is the sparing use of the death penalty, or the clemency by Biden, somehow traces to all kinds of rapes and murders, or that this robust use of the death penalty, and even robust, there's not going to be more than probably a dozen federal executions a year, and they will be in unusual federal murder or capital punishment cases, which are really kind of a class apart. So there is no connection, and that is the lie, between doing this and making people safer. The jury in general, by the way, is out on that question. I want to be really hyper-rational when I talk about the death penalty, because I realize I have my own opposition, and it's really not based on, my own opposition is based on just, straight up, I can get all fancy, Kantian factors that, a state should not treat a defendant as subhuman, which is what you need to impose the death penalty. I understand people feel differently. I'm not trying to claim some, better vantage point. But it is a thought through position, and what is, I think, really offensive, dishonest, Trumpian about the Trump call, which he'll be in a position to control, for increased use of the death penalty, is it's simply a kind of an emotional war cry meant to give a kind of a cheap hit of that is completely removed from what he's asserting the death penalty would do. So it strikes me that that's particularly shabby on the part of a national leader when you're talking about the federal death penalty, that the leader of the country needs to have really a considered position that leads the people in what is inevitably a moral question of when and why you impose the death penalty, and not this kind of guttural, we're going to get the rapists and murderers, which it's basically not the case with the federal death penalty, and is meant as everything else for sort of cheap political points. So there you have it. I just want to stress again, my sense of what's really distasteful here is not specifically, I think, because I'm against the death penalty, but just his cavalier, political, guttural, and fundamentally dishonest stance meant to score cheap political points. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.